that oh, sorry. I should have given you a minute to start recording, Denise. You probably noticed when you registered that our clinic has kind of a focus or a theme each time that we try to hold one. We try to put sessions together, that are a part of the capstone, or that are about a specific part or type of writing, or some things that we're seeing that we're receiving a lot of student questions about. And this really is kind of like a back to the beginning, really starting out writing the capstone. So that you'll notice this session obviously is an introduction to the doctoral capstone, and we'll focus on what is the capstone, whether you're doing a dissertation, doc study, project study, what are the kind of key components. We've got Megan today, who we'll be handing it over to in just a minute, to present on that. We also have sessions on grammar in the doctoral capstone, kind of writing, another session on writing, organization, and structure. Again, really kind of understanding the basics of how this is organized, how you should approach writing it. And then we'll end today with working with the capstone template. So tips for, how to start using that document as you move forward with your, proposal and, your final study. So welcome to everyone. I suppose I should introduce myself. I am Kelly Chermak. I'm one of the managing editors on the form and style team. I'm going to hand it over to Tobias Ball, my co-manager, who will introduce Megan, our presenter, and have a few other notes to pass along before we get going. Tobias?
Thanks, Kelly. I appreciate that. And I want to extend what Kelly said. Welcome, everyone. We're very glad you're here. I haven't looked at the entire participant list, but I imagine in addition to some students, there's probably some faculty and maybe even some staff. It's all really good information, like Kelly said. The theme really is foundational, right? Even if you are steeped and almost in the process and almost at the end, this is still good information to have, especially as you're writing and revising and just navigating your way through the process. We're excited to have Megan Irving be our presenter this morning. Like Kelly said, this is about, introducing the capstone, and really, I can't think of anyone better than Megan Irving. Megan, prior to being an editor, worked at Walden University as an academic advisor. So she has a lot of institutional knowledge and a lot of empathy for students. She was there with students at almost every step of every process. I mean, not just the writing process, but when they first enrolled as a student. And anytime they had a question or a challenge, Megan was there to support them. So with that sort of empathy, she gets to use her English background and her editing skills to introduce to you today the doctoral capstone. Megan Irving, please take it away.
Hi, thanks Tobias and Kelly. Hopefully I can live up to that introduction. As was said, just trying to get my slides started. There we go. So we're going to kind of discuss the doctoral capstone as a, what is it? Why, not necessarily why you do it, obviously it's part of the program, but kind of just discuss it and some things, how the capstone is different. Oops, I got a typo. I did not see that earlier. But how it's different from your coursework. I'm going to go over the main sections. The way it's organized within your personal study may differ depending on your program, but the main sections remain the same. And then we'll take some time to go over the resources, especially kits and checklists that Walden provides to help you with this process. Then, of course, I'll reserve some time at the end for any questions. So what is the doctoral capstone? Capstone, you may or may not have actually heard that term, doctoral capstone. It's kind of a catch-all for whether you're doing a dissertation, a doctoral study, a project study, whatever your program and what, the variety of your program that you're choosing to complete requires. It's that big written piece at the end. Those are the term, sort of the overall term we use for it. Sometimes, you'll even if you're doing a doc study, someone still may call it a dissertation or a project study. It's all kind of just referring to that. It's a big document. Its size may depend on your program. For some doctoral studies that have a lot of other outside components, such as our doctoral nursing practice program, there's a lot of other steps that you're doing, but you're still creating a good sized document. And it's including multiple chapters or sections. And the goal here is you're producing original work. It's usually research-based, and it's the project, the study you're developing, based on your interest in the field, as well as identifying a gap that is in the literature and research in your field. So you'll also be demonstrating your knowledge. It's kind of that chance where you're showing off really everything that you've learned throughout your program. Showing the expertise you've gained in your field, showing that you've become an expert in that information. And this is done, one, by conducting an actual study, but also by showing your familiarity with the literature. This is also, you're showing that you're a professional, you've reached that very end point. Graduation is really getting into, coming close to grasp. You're going to have that degree soon. And so really you're showing yourself as a professional. And that's going to happen both in your writing as well as when you're conducting the study. This is a chance to show off your writing skills and showing how you've developed your scholarly thought and your capability to join the conversation that is out there as a scholar. You're contributing to research and the professional practice, what's out there. You're becoming a member of this. And then also, and Walden's specific emphasis is an application to social change. So you're showing how what you focused on has the potential to make a positive difference in the world. So coursework versus capstone. Obviously, by the time you reach go through the program, you're very used to the way coursework is lined up. You're learning new things, you're getting to explore new ideas. You may end up working with things that you never want to work with again, discovering, no, I don't like this type of study, I don't like this theory, but you're learning things. And you're developing your skills, finding what interests you. Certainly the assignments, the directions, sometimes they're very straightforward. Discussion posts can be very straightforward, reply to this, start this conversation. You work very closely with your instructor over a coursework, and the goals are very laid out, which can be, depending on your personal learning style, very helpful to have those very set goals, step-by-step things. The capstone, it gets a little different, and the transition can be a little rough depending on, if you're someone who struggles if you don't have these very strict deadlines, or even just the transition from having a weekly set deadline to a more, oh yeah, we need to have this by the end of the quarter. So there's that sort of adjustment period that goes through while you're looking to design and come up with your original research. So you're doing lots of research at this point, especially at the very beginning, not only to see what's out there, but to see what interests you. What do you really want to focus on? Keeping in mind that you will be working with that for quite a while, and keeping in mind, depending where you process, you will end up hating your topic at some point. That is completely normal. It's expected. You'll still work with your chair and they'll help you through that kind of transition process. I think everyone gets a point where they just want to say, I don't want to do this. I want to do something else. And generally it goes, okay, let's go save something else for when you're done, and focus on that. So if you're feeling very burnt out on your topic, that is normal. It's fully expected. Because really what you're doing, you're developing that authority and expertise in it. You're getting to know all about it. And you're learning how to explain and share that information with people. That's another big part of the capstone, is showing that research and being able to share it with others. And you're really looking to push the knowledge and information in your field out there. I mean, you're going to be conducting a study that really brings new information, whether or not it's, doesn't have to be completely brand new. It can be that, but you might be working with participants of a slightly different background of other versions, or You'll have research questions or interview questions that differ from what other people have done. So you're really adding to that conversation. You're adding to the body of literature. And once, you're done and everything's been approved, it gets published. You become one of those sources that other researchers can use in their own, their own research. You really do become a professional in that aspect. And here the goals are really more self-designed, something you'll work with your chair and your committee to kind of come up. And that comes up, with deadlines as well as, what constitutes an actual, goal and a marker for you to have gone, all right, this is definite progress, and this could be, something small, in the, I'm going to, research this much, I'm going to work with the library, or it can be more of the, yes, I'm going to get you a draft of, this section by this date. And that's something where you really want to learn to work and communicate with your chair and determine what is the best communication style for the two of you to have this strong working relationship. Because it is just going to be more one-on-one, and it's going to fall more to you as the the student researcher to take control versus getting those very set, do this by this date. Here are the prompts for your course paper. It's going to be different from that, and it's okay to feel very overwhelmed during that transition because it's new. Not everyone in academics writes a capstone. Only those who are pursuing a doctoral degree are going to that point. And, so that puts you in this different, category of people. So you're doing something that's very difficult, that's very intense, and it is completely expected for you to have those feelings about it. And hopefully, everyone here with Walden will be able to help you with that. And certainly, feel free to always reach out, to your support that we have available when you get there and kind of going, all right, I'm confused, I need help, or I need direction. Where can I get other tips? And hopefully the tips I'm giving here and information, especially our resources, will be beneficial. So the main sections. The study is kind of broken up into two parts. You've got the proposal and then what happens after the proposal. So the proposal happens first. And a main part of this is you are actually proposing the study. You're not going to be doing any work in the field, working with participants. You're not going to be actually getting any results at this point. In a way, you're asking permission with the proposal, saying, this is what I want to work with. That, and there's quite a few other parts to it, but I'm just going to talk about the actual document and what you'll be writing. So the main parts that occur in this capstone, and this will vary depending on your program and the type of study you're doing, where these fall, except for the introduction, that is pretty much always the first part, whether it's chapter 1 or the part of section 1, we start with the introduction. And that is an introduction to the study. And it usually includes some background on, what you're focused on. So it's not a history of the topic, but it is, background information in connection to your specific study idea. The next part, and it's a fairly lengthy part and rarely anyone's favorite. We have lots of resources on the literature review because it is a unique kind of writing to that. And that is where you're showing your expertise of the information that's already out there, as well as discussing, where there is a gap in the literature that you're going to be addressing with your study. How is what you want to do going to benefit the field in a way. And it's a fairly lengthy part, depending on it, on that. But it's a good point where you'll be discussing, what's out there. You present ideas in a very nice thematic way, showing how the literature connects in relation to your study. So it's not something where it's like a, old school book report or an annotated bibliography, which, that's something that may happen in coursework or even in a development point of being able to provide summary of the information. But the literature review takes it to that next step where you are, taking what you've learned and you're showing how it applies to a specific idea, which is your, the topic of your study, as well as showing how the literature connects to its, to each other. So you'll take these, ideas that maybe have never really been connected out there before, depending on, the scope that you're taking with your study, or, the relevance out there. And really kind of showing how they interlock and connect, to these ideas that you're focusing on with your project. The literature review is going to be made up majority of, newer, most relevant research. You may hear out there the 5-year rule. There's no law or official rule of how many things need to be within the last 5 years. The goal is to be providing information on what is the newest information, so what's really relevant in the field right now. And so that's why that's there. You'll also, be doing things and discussing, maybe a theoretical or conceptual framework, looking at seminal texts, explaining more of the direction that you're going. And then the third part of the proposal, which is oddly my favorite, I'm not sure why, I just really do like the methodology part. And that's where you're explaining how your study is going to be designed. Is it a qualitative study or a quantitative study? Are you looking to, take some, look at, a big survey that, someone else in the field has done, something from the World Health Organization, something they did, and you want to look again at their data, doing a secondary analysis, what you're focused on? Or are you looking to, do something where you want to interview participants of a certain demographic to find out, their experiences or viewpoint in relation to your topic? And that's something that you lay out in this section. And then, you also discuss, what is that framework that you're using? Is there a specific theory that's you're using to back up what you're talking about? Will you be, framing it within, a certain, the conceptual framework idea? And these are things, that you'll have been learning throughout your coursework as well. So it's not like you'll just should be dropped in and go, I don't know what a conceptual framework is, or where do I find theories? This information you'll be gaining depending on, throughout your coursework. An interesting part of the proposal is that because you haven't done any actual data gathering or official creation of the study, it's a proposal, it's something you're suggesting. So a lot of it is actually written in the future tense, saying, I intend to recruit, 15 teachers from, who teach, kindergarten through 3rd grade in, the southwestern, part of the United States. If that's what your topic says, you're saying these things, you're proposing it. It hasn't actually happened yet. And that goes through the first part. And there's an approval process, sort of for each of it. But once you finish the proposal, there's a bigger sort of like, yes, this study has been approved. And once you reach that point of the corrected proposal, and you get approval from our institutional review board, which says, yes, you are eligible to go out in the field and do this. That's there to help protect you as a researcher, Walden as an institution, and of course, participants, to make sure nothing you are proposing could be, detrimental or have a negative effect, on people out in the world. Obviously, probably, we don't have, medical type programs, but it wouldn't be here, I want to go out and, give people this weird pill I'm developing. It's be like, no, it's like, but they'll, that's part of that process of making sure everything is going to be, well put together. And after that, you actually get to conduct your study. We're not going to talk too much about that because it's going to be very unique to what you're doing, but it's where you're doing that. Are you analyzing, that secondary analysis of survey data, doing your interviews, running, the necessary statistical analyses, looking at, themes and things that develop? All of that becomes from that. And then you write the next 2 parts of your study. The first is the results, and that is an explanation of the data that you gathered. whether it is coming from, if it's more, a quantitative study where you're looking at, presenting maybe a lot of figures and graphs, showing these percentages. Maybe you've run some, very, some in-depth statistical tests to see trends that, or, you're showing all the themes that you gathered from, qualitative interviews from that. You're just presenting that information. Then the last part is where you discuss it. And that's where you're going to connect it back to the literature. So it's sort of a call back to that other part in the proposal. And then, connecting it also to, your theoretical or conceptual framework with that, and seeing how that connects, and really giving that overwhelming information to your audience, going, hey, not just going, here, this is what I found, but this is what I feel what I found means. And that's really where you're bringing that information out to, what's going to be out there to help other people, take the next step maybe in the study, and going, oh, I looked at this participation, but maybe it'd be better if I'd done a broader audience, and I could have gotten a wider demographic. You'll be, potentially suggesting ideas for future research, sort of those sort of next steps there. And then together, that's your study. Once you've actually gotten to the proposal part, completion, unfortunately, it is not done. You don't just go, yep, it's approved, I get to forget about it. As I mentioned, because originally you're proposing it, you haven't done any yet. You're using the future tense. Once you're actually moving on to the results and the discussion and reaching, full completion, you do actually need to go back to that proposal part, the introduction, depending on, are these the chapters of a dissertation? Are these, embedded sections of a doctoral study? That's going to vary, but you will want to go back to what consisted of your proposal and adjust the tense, because this is no longer, I will recruit, 10 to 15 participants. You need to adjust that, and go, I recruited 12, or I intended to recruit 10 to 15 participants, but I was only able to, find 9. Or, those kind of things need to be adjusted. A lot of that happens, especially with the methodology, because that's where you were explaining what you were hoping to do. And that needs to be adjusted to explain what you did do. Certainly you don't start all over with it, but it is something where you have to make those adjustments. And this is important so that your entire study is one cohesive document. There are very few people who are going to sit down and read your entire study from word 1 to the end of, the last appendix or your very last reference. If you think about, research you've done on your own, if you've looked at any other dissertations or studies that have been published, have you sat and done, you probably haven't sat and read the entire thing. It's a lot of work, and it involves a lot of things that may not actually connect to your goal of the research. And that's what's going to happen once it's published. So it's really important that, once it's published, that a reader could come in and maybe they only read, a little bit of the introduction and go, yeah, that's something that, I want to know more. And they're really interested in the results, but they want to know a little bit, how did you design this study? Because I really like this idea and I kind of want to take it to a next step. Or maybe I want to, replicate the study. How did they, how is it put together? And so that's where you need to make sure that, what you said during your methodology, is the same thing that you actually did. The person might only read, the methodology and glance at the results, or, sort of skip the discussion of findings, depending on what they're hoping to get from it. So that's why you're looking to make this big document and making sure, sort of those final, cleanup steps that you'll be doing is going to have that adjustment to the tense, explaining, what you did do, we're going to do, hope to do, that you talk about during your proposal, to that final big document that says, this is what I did and this is what I found. So we'll talk a little bit here about the individual parts within those sections. So the intro, I kind of mentioned before, the background, that's really in connection to your specific topic, your study. And then, the problem statement, which is where you're identifying why your study needs to be completed. Excuse me. So what is your goal? What is the gap in the literature that you're trying to fill? Why is your study necessary to be done? And that also connects to the purpose statement, where you're, explaining, what, the goals you are seeking to fulfill with your study. The literature review. And we have many resources out there and do webinars and a lot of residency presentations on the literature review. So certainly don't feel that this is the only time you'll hear someone talking about it. But it's where you discuss your theoretical foundation or your conceptual framework, where you're introducing that information. It's where you're introducing current literature on the topic and explaining how it is connected to your study. So it's where you move away from just explaining, what the literature said, rewriting an abstract in a way. You don't want to be doing that in the literature review. You really want to be providing that important information for your reader of why is this literature important for this topic, making those connections. That's where you're also identifying the gap in the research. It can be, it's something, is there just not very much out there on the topic? Is there a demographic that hasn't been very well researched regarding the topic? Is it something where, the topic was really popular 15 years ago, but people haven't been doing a lot of current research on it? All those kind of things can be seen as a gap in the literature. And that's something that gets addressed in this section as well. Methodology. Mentioned that. So it's, the design, what is going to make up your study? What was your study that you did? How you're approaching it and why you're approaching it in that way. And then the plans for your study, and this is where you'll discuss how you intend to analyze the data. Will you be, using some specific, steps that other, researchers have done, going, this is a really good way of data analysis, for a qualitative review? Are you planning on, running certain statistical tests? Those kind of things get discussed in that section. After the study is complete, so your results, that's where you, are discussing your data collection. And you'll want to make sure that, of course, this then, matches, obviously, when you're first writing it, you're explaining exactly what you did. And then keeping in mind, yep, I've got to, make sure that it connects to chapter 3 or section 3 in that methodology. And then also your data analysis. So explaining how you, what you did with the data to get your results. And the amount of that, depends on, your topic and your data. You're not providing your actual analysis. You're not going to be giving all of the codes you used or, showing all the steps process, because once it's published, it kind of becomes public information that's out there. And you don't really want someone else to be able to go in and go, hey, I'm just going to take all of your data and not actually do my own work and then make my own results. And all I have to do is just cite you because I'm doing a callback. So, you want to make sure that, you're protecting your own information and the hard work you did with the amounts. You want to have enough information so that someone could replicate the study, but not so much that they don't actually have to conduct it themselves. And that's something that your chair will help with as well, and letting you know how much information, needs to be in there, what needs to be explained more, going, this is probably too much. We don't need, this many, this detail of information. And then the discussion of findings. And this is where you're providing the context back to those ideas of how it connects to literature, to what's going on in the field. Depending on the type of study, if you're doing more of a project study where maybe, you developed, a professional development session, or, something that you would be given to, a certain population to help, for education purposes, or something that, depending on the type of study you're doing, providing that context not only to the literature, but to the field. This is where you provide recommendations. This may be something for, future research, something researchers should keep, looking at, which in a way could be something that if you're thinking like, oh, I kind of wish I'd gone with this, or, I had my participants, but I really didn't get a very broad, demographic scope. I wish I'd expanded it or, found different ways, and those come out in recommendations. It's also, depending if it's something more of a project study, how should, the people that are getting your information, how should it be used? What are the best steps for, solving the problem essentially that you address with your study with that problem statement. And then this is also where you discuss implications of that information. What will it do? What does it have the potential to do? Certainly you can't guarantee that the information that you've done will do anything because we don't know what's going to happen. But it's certainly saying, what may happen? What are the positive social change implications of the information that you, discovered through your findings? It's also where you present conclusions, not only of the data that you gathered, but, you're creating that sort of finalized statement for the whole study. So it's something to kind of think about what happens at the very beginning and at the very end with your doctoral study, is that not only, are those beginnings and ends of certain sections, but it's also a beginning and an end of your entire study. And even though, as I said, very few people are probably going to read it from, page 1 to page whatever, at the end, you still want it to have, a cohesive feel so that it is a, actual document, not just sort of a collection of information. All right. Now that I've given you lots of information about what happens, take a few minutes to talk about some of the resources we have here. One of the things we offer, and this is on our Form and Style website, and I'll take us there in just a minute, are what we call kits. And these are a collection of resources designed around a specific topic. So we have one that's designed for those who are multilingual writers. So kind of that maybe, American English wasn't your first language, either you learned, and did a lot of academic writing, or your, undergraduate degree in a different language, or in, a different, version, British English, where spellings are a little bit different than what American academic English uses. Some of those kind of information are collected there. Certainly it's not, only for multilingual writers. So if you're not going, oh, I can't look at this. No, it's still great information. And sometimes it's good to have a refresher because it's been a long time since you've looked at some of more of those, writing, kind of requirements that go into, American academic English and tips and things. So certainly never feel that you can't look at something just because you're not sure that it fits you. Then we have a proposal kit. So resources along helping out with those first 3 parts of your study. Final study kit, same idea, whether for that. And then a form and style kit, which helps with making sure your document is all ready for us us editors to give it a, to look over, kind of making sure that you're able to put your, best work towards us. So, we can make sure that it's got meeting, some, style parameters and form, making sure, oh yes, the margins and everything are correct, but then also, making sure that you're, taking, double checking things and helping you take like that next step in terms of polishing it. So I'm gonna do my best here to hop over. There we go. So I'm gonna double check that this is. Someone confirm that they can see the form and style webpage? And the chat is fine.
Yeah, we got it, Megan. We
Okay,
can see
good.
it.
I'm never positive that Zoom wants to follow me.
Well, okay, actually, no, it is not loading. It's still on the slide with the links.
Okay. Let me. Go.
Would you like me to try sharing mine and you can talk through it? Would that be helpful?
No, I think is it showing now?
There it is.
There
we
it is.
got it.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep, I just had to get it to reshare. All right. So kits here, they have their own little drop-down menu. And then just the information here is then contained. They actually scan down, so you could actually go from one to the other. So it starts there. So here's the proposal kit. And these are information that's out there, have there, as well as, resources from departments besides, the editing team. So information that's up there. And so is, so that information is here. Other resources that we have involve the templates and how to use the templates. The template, even though it may feel kind of awkward at first, it is your friend, and you want to get to know it and you want to spend lots of time with it. So even if it feels awkward and you're like, no, I'm just going to build this all from scratch in my own document, the template will save you so much time and frustration because we've done the unpleasant formatting things like margins and page numbers for you. If you've ever had to fight with Microsoft Word regarding page numbers, you know how nice it is to have not to have to do with that. If you haven't had to have that fight, you are very lucky. It is just something that Microsoft Word, it doesn't like to comply and do what you want to do. So that's really the template has benefits to that. The Office of Research and Doctoral Services has a lot of resources as well. Sometimes you may just hear that our office called ORDS. With Walden, we love our acronyms. And this is where you can find checklists regarding your actual program, documents that you may need, and also student research support. So I'm just going to pull these up each briefly so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So the templates, that's going to take you here again to our form and style page. And here, you just go down and select your program, and then depending on there, like here for our doctorate in education, there are project studies or a dissertation. By the time you get to this and you're writing, you'll know which one you'll need. But that information there, as well as instructions, are there for you. We always also include a form and style checklist. This is a style guide to kind of help with what are the things we're looking at APA. Certainly by this point, you're getting very familiar with APA, but here are sort of some, reminders. There's so many, different requirements. And we update to reflect the current guidelines for the study, or as well as, for APA, as well as if Walden makes any adjustments or requirements. And so information is available there. And here is the Office of Research and Doctoral Studies, and where some of those resources are. Again, here you'd be kind of looking at, for your particular program on that. So if you're doing a PhD program, on some level, those all get lumped together because you're doing a dissertation. And each dissertation, whether you're looking at, a PhD in management, if you're doing, PhD in nursing, regardless of what your actual program is, if it's a PhD and you're looking at that dissertation, the way it is laid out, the components, that they all are kind of universal in that way. So PhD students get lumped together that way versus our more doctoral study related program where things are a little bit different in terms of projects and study. They tend to be broken out then by program because there are other additional things that are happening through there. But this information is here for, regardless of your program, you can find that information. There are also really great other resources here, student research support, which we mentioned here, information that's on there, just for tips and information. So this is really a great website to get familiar with as you are approaching and starting the doctoral study process. Probably something you've not dealt with much, during coursework, depending where you are in your program, because obviously it's, it's focusing on the research. It's really that end area that we focus on most. So the information here, is available. So, certainly if someone mentions, oh, have you looked for the rubric? It's probably on this page. So something to look for as well. And then that student research support. All right. Always unsure to whether or not I'm going to talk too much or not talk enough and override times for questions. But I think we've got pretty good, oops, wrong direction. We'll go here. I think I'll give us a couple more minutes before I take questions, just to look a little bit more at the ORDS site here, just because there is so much information. So really here, it's not all, going to just be things to read. We understand that, everyone has their own unique learning style, and what works great for one person may not work great for the other. So we try to have those kind of different resources. So you'll see here that there, that we have guides, there's going to be more written. We'll also have videos. This is where you're going to be finding forms. If you're doing a dissertation, there's a whole guidebook that you'll get to be familiar with. So there's kind of resources that are out there. And we kind of break things down in terms of, where you are in the process. And so hopefully, if you're, take at least one thing away from my presentation here this morning, it's, where, what are the parts of the doctoral study process, and knowing, what was a part of the proposal, what happened, what's something that happens after that. And that'll help you when finding resources as well. And so here again with student research support, there's information here, starting at the beginning here. And this can help you, depending on information learning, like how do you identify that problem? You have a topic that you, or a, area of the field that you're really interested in, but how do you take that next step and determine, that there is a problem, something that needs to be researched? How do I collect and manage my data? What tools are there? I mean, what should I be using out there? And this information will, kind of help you walk through those processes and give you that. Certainly, you can, might want to start with going, okay, let me start here at the beginning and work my way to writing my research. It's a great information, but certainly you might just, go, hey, what's the best way to see, how to, interpret my data? What information can you give me here? And you can get, information here, just looking at that one. It's like, oh, okay, here's some resources. You've heard people talk about, different ways of looking at things. What are stat tests? What are some options that I have? And that's something that's out there. Walton does also offer some sort of tutoring for information on using some of those tools. So certainly look, don't forget that this is something that's out there, all of this information from that. All right. Now I've been able to give you a little bit. Let's go back to, my homepage in a way, the Capstone Form and Style page. I do want to show you again where to find the template. So this is what the page is going to look like when you land on it. For the first time. Hopefully, if you've not bookmarked this site, you will at some point, because we've got a lot of great information. And we have a lot more than just sort of shows here. But if you're needing a template, easiest way is from there, and then you select your program. We'll say where you're a PhD student, and then we've got these templates. A little bit of information if you're different, depending on program on that. And then we've got guidance how to use it. And this is really important because there are a lot of different parts to it, and things have to be formatted in special ways. And what does, why does it look this way? How do I get rid of these comments, this information on there? And we've got a lot of information on there from that. And so, that's something to, think of, like, how do I create a table, do something with the table of contents? I don't know, never had to do that before. We've got information on there. We also have formatting resources. We have a video here, we can walk through on that. And certainly, of course, later today, if you're able to join that session, I'll be going over the template in, much more detail. And then, because we have a moment, I'm going to do my little smart guide.
Oh, okay.
My little smart guide commercial. I just always love being able to tell show these students, because you don't always know about them. But here is just a way of, when you're looking at writing, if you're needing a little more help, a little more quick guide on it. And these are just short little documents to walk through something. This is a really good thing to know that it is there. I personally love them, which is why I advertise them. So keep that in mind. And that is really kind of the last thing I want to make sure I've shown you. So I can take some time here for questions if we've got any. I know there's been information going on in the chat, but
Megan, I'm going to jump in here.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you so very much. I want to say a couple of things. We've had some great conversation in the chat. What Megan did was give everyone almost everything that you need to know to write your capstone. And if not the exact information, but a resource for it. Now, the way that works for me, that sort of instruction, is that I take a lot of notes, and I know that I'm not going to understand every single thing right away, and I may have to go back and hear it a second time. So a couple of things for you to keep in mind. One, this session was recorded, so you can go back. Two, now you've been introduced to Megan Irving and Kelly Shermack and Tobias Ball, and sometimes we answer emails even. That's kind of a joke. We always answer email. But if you come across a part of the process that you're confused, you can email editor@mail.waldenu.edu, or maybe you can drop a line to, say, Megan, who is the owner of a lot of this information after today, and she can answer a logistic question for you. So that was outstanding. Thank you very much, Megan. I'm particularly grateful for Megan, not only because she's an outstanding editor and a great communicator, but Megan just moved in the past couple of weeks. So she's already, jam-packed with busyness, but took time to present. So thank you very much, Megan. We're going to take about a 13, 14-minute break here. The next session is with editor Dana Harrington, and she's going to discuss one of my favorite topics, and it's grammar. Don't be afraid of grammar. Don't think of it like it's some sort of weird theoretical trigonometry, right? Grammar is just a language that we're going to use to communicate to our audience when writing. So thank you, Megan, for your presentation today. Thank you, Denise Long, for all of your organization. And we will see you all in about 15 minutes. Bye, all.
Bye.